Up, trying to make it out the city, I done been brave enough, chasing blunts with money's king.
Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's Fat Tuesday, folks. I hope you've got your punchkis. Your old pal Jake's been enjoying them. This thing is slipping. Your old pal Jake has been enjoying quite a few pastry treats. If you're not familiar, Fat Tuesday, aka Punchki Day, is when you have an excuse to eat probably the world's most caloric donut in terms of just raw design. The thing's fantastic. I delight in this day. And what a great excuse to talk about the region sort of around Poland. You know, that area. What else is going on there? Well, there's a good old-fashioned invasion of the Ruskies. And a lot of the news today focuses on that. In honor of Punchki Day, and for any old reason to talk about freedom for Ukraine, we're looking at that. I really was attempting to make a Two for Tuesday intro. It doesn't matter. So we got a couple real peculiar developments. Number one, Joy Reid has a look at the fact that MAGA, the sedition caucus in the House, has insisted that the January 6th, footage from the January 6th attempted coup be given over to Fox News, not the media in general, but Fox News. And it would appear that Kevin McCarthy is going to do that. Why that may not be the win they think it is. Then Joe Biden did a surprise visit to Ukraine. He met in Kiev with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Quite a move, and it says a whole lot about U.S. intentions over the next couple of years. And frankly, I'm here for it. I'm delighted that this has happened. And then Beau of the Fifth Column talking about Russia's response, or rather Russia's posturing over the START treaty. If you're not familiar, the START treaty is an attempt to de-escalate nuclear arms, but it probably doesn't mean what it seems like it does on the face. In fact, it is more accurate to say it is a counter to what Biden has just done. But let's dive into it, and do allow me to give a new intro for Joy Reid, because the lady deserves it. So Fox weirdo Tucker Carlson got a hold of 40,000 hours of January 6th related material, tapes from around the Capitol, etc. This was one of the lesser known deals struck between the sedition caucus that was holding up McCarthy's appointment as Speaker of the House, and Kevin McCarthy. It's got some interesting implications. A lot of them actually could work in the favor of progressives, but it's also incredibly dangerous for the country. Let's have a gander at Joy Reid talking about it. Here she is.
If there was one main takeaway from last week's release of court filings from Dominion Voting Systems lawsuit against Fox News, it's that many of the hosts on that network are conscious and remorseless liars. Shocking, I know. Remember, Fox's own lawyers have argued that you should not believe the words coming out of the mouth of their top-rated primetime host, Tucker Carlson. So it ought to concern you that, as we learned today, nominal House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has decided to give Tucker exclusive access to more than 40,000 hours of Capitol surveillance footage from the January 6th insurrection. This is Kevin fulfilling a promise that he made to the extreme far-right members of his caucus who demanded the footage as a condition of eventually supporting him for Speaker, 15 votes in. And beyond the quisling nature of the gift to the far-right.
Okay, so first of all, I likes to give credit where it's due. That shirt is cool as hell. Oh, Joy Reid, I love it. And also, come on, quisling? Who uses the word quisling? Other than that talk show, the comedy fella. Oh my God, why can't I remember one of the most famous late show hosts ever? Anyway, quisling's a dumb word, but it means, my understanding is it means like lackey, henchman, etc.
Right. Let's not forget that the person who now has exclusive access to this footage has described January 6th this way.
Oh, yeah, I guess this is more important.
Of all the things that January 6th it was definitely not a violent terrorist attack. It wasn't an insurrection. An outbreak of mob violence, a forgettably minor outbreak by recent standards.
It was a coup. It was described around the world by organizations whose job it is to describe it as a coup.
You see people walking around and taking pictures. They don't look like terrorists. They look like tourists.
And if you think Tucker and his team will use this content honestly, well, we have a bridge to sell you. It's in Brooklyn. It's beautiful. But there is a bigger issue here. The Justice Department and Capitol Police had previously pushed back on the release of this footage as a security risk, as it would include things like where safe rooms and security cameras are located.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know what Tucker will choose to show, but we do know who will be watching. So giving him, of all people, free reign over such footage cannot be in America's best interests. Joining me now is Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland, who's a member of the January 6th Select Committee. Congressman, thank you for being here. I mean, I will go on. This is a man who made...
For a moment before she goes on, Jamie Raskin, I mean, the guy is tough as nails. I have so much respect for just his incredible endurance. Look at what he is going through. Loss of his son, a cancer diagnosis. I mean, my word. Here's something I'd like you to keep in mind while you're watching this. Yes, look, don't let me distract from the main takeaway. It's dangerous. What Tucker Carlson is going to do with this footage isn't good. The question is only, is he smart enough not to use it in a blatantly MAGA way, or smart enough not to use it at all? Because as I will go into in a moment, yes, it would be detrimental to us all if he were to try to use it as a propaganda piece, but for different reasons. And what I would like you to keep in mind is why Kevin McCarthy may not have wanted to give all that footage to Tucker Carlson.
Made an entire documentary called Patriot Purge, in which he alleged that January 6th was a false flag. It's been called deranged by Rolling Stone. It's pushed baseless conspiracy theories, this thing that he created. Off the rails, NPR has called it. The only expectation I can have is that he's going to use this footage, comb through it, and create some sort of alternate narrative January 6th. Can you talk about, you as somebody who was on the January 6th committee, how do you feel about that, and what do you fear based on what he's going to do?
Well, Joy, thank you. Of course, we spent a year and a half studying this, and we found no evidence of Antifa's involvement at all. No evidence of this being a false flag operation. But even if you're paranoid and watching Fox News all day, you don't have to believe us. Just believe what Kevin McCarthy said on January 6th himself to Donald Trump when Donald Trump tried to float that to Kevin McCarthy when he called him desperate, saying, call off the dogs. And Trump told him, oh, these aren't our people. This is Antifa. And McCarthy said, no, they're right here in my office. These are your people, Mr. President. And that prompted the reply from Trump to the effect of, well, maybe they just care a little bit more about a stolen election than you do, Kevin. Look, all of this is not in search of the truth with Kevin McCarthy or with Tucker Carlson. It's in search of a conspiracy theory. It's in search of corroborating disinformation and propaganda. And we know that from his 3-part miniseries that he put together, Patriot Purge, which asserted that it was a false flag operation run by Antifa and the FBI. But we found no evidence of that. Our bipartisan committee that operated for more than a year and a half. So really what it demonstrates is the absolute stranglehold that the MAGA right, that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz are exercising over Kevin McCarthy now as they work overtime to try to put Donald Trump back in office.
Well, they've also said, people like Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene, that the purpose of having this footage that they're celebrating is that they want to help clear people who are charged with crimes for having broken into the Capitol. They've all tweeted something to that effect, Gosar, Gaetz, and Greene.
I want to pause it on this. Yeah, let's let them eat their words for a moment. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, J6 videotapes will also be available for all J6 defendants. That's interesting. All 42,000 plus hours. I wonder. First of all, I don't think anything they say should be taken as true. Not that it shouldn't be taken seriously, shouldn't be taken as true. Like if she says this will happen, that means next to nothing other than this is something I may half-heartedly attempt. Paul Gosar, who I suspect may have something of a truck problem, maybe not. I've had some friends who had problems, and all I'm saying is the meth checks out. The defendants aren't given the proper background to defend themselves. It has to happen. Absolutely, it has to happen. Okay. And then Gaetz, F that guy. We are going to be a child sex trafficker. We are going to be able to sue me, you mother. We are going to be able to see if there is exculpatory evidence that would show people never intended to violate the law. Boy, if it shows them inside the Capitol, thank you. Train coming by. Yeah. If it shows them inside the Capitol, it shows them violating the law. It's that simple. So here's a question to ask. All these folks, they're making a big deal out of getting the tapes out. Do you really think they give an F about J6 defendants? I don't. I really don't. I don't think they give an F about anybody except themselves. Why are they pushing so hard for this? It's a political stunt. That is all it is to them. Why would the Republicans not want to also engage in this stunt? Why would Fox engage in this stunt? Why is it a stunt that works for them? If they remember how we've talked in the past about how they work. If they make a big deal about this and they flap their arms and say J6, and it works out for our side, that is all Republicans hear. The average Republican, all they hear is J6, our side is correct. And when they hear the other side, when they hear, facts and the truth, all they hear is J6, and we say the other side's correct. But remember, consequences are the difference. This played out in a court of law. that changes things. That means those facts get checked in an arena where if you lie, you go to prison. Ooh, boy, that changes the math significantly.
Are we in danger of not just that, of them trying to twist this footage, cut little pieces of it that they think will help criminals get out of jail or get out of trouble, but also I'm concerned that these are the people that the Russians listen to, including Tucker, that he can put on something that is false, not real, but that is very useful to our enemies, including knowing where the security cameras are on Capitol Hill.
Well, look, Tucker Carlson is a pro-Putin, pro-Orban, pro-autocrat propagandist. So while we've got the president of the United States over in Ukraine expressing solidarity with the forces of democratic freedom, Kevin McCarthy is releasing these tapes to one network, not making it public for everybody, not giving it to CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times, Washington Post, giving it to Fox News and to Tucker Carlson so he can forward his propaganda theories. And as you say, this is a serious security risk. I mean, the reason, there's thousands of hours of footage that are out there already, but the reason all of it wasn't released is precisely because it lays out floor design, it lays out evacuation routes, it lays out where the vice president went, it lays out where the senior members of Congress were evacuated and so on. So I hope that Kevin McCarthy at least has planned for that. But at this point, since he's made it available to one network, he may as well make it available to all networks, because we know, as you suggest, they're going to be cherry picking it in order to, corroborate however they can their absurd conspiracy theories.
That is a really good point. If you are going to make it available to one network, you should indeed simply release it to the general public. At the very least, release it to all networks within whatever what little security limitations were put on when it was given to Fox. Yes, absolutely, that is what should happen. I'm not sure that's what's going to happen, but it should be, I would say, at a minimal, a complaint filed by the other networks. It should be formally requested by the networks. Yes. But again, I stress the point of this. What more are they going to be able to say, the networks, other than, go read the J6 reports? Probably nothing new, but it'll give them an ability to counter the splicing that Fox News does of it. And if this is not released to other networks, what we should be watching for is awkward cuts. If you see what appears to be a really what is it, exculpatory? I don't know. A piece of footage that looks one way, that Fox plays over and over again, and it's like the same 5 seconds of footage, we should start asking, show us the whole clip. Show us the before and after of what happens there. And I promise you, Fox will have cherry-picked it.
Embodied in the Patriot Purge series.
One can only hope that all of the networks, including this one, will insist that everyone get it, because I've never heard of one network getting exclusive access to what is essentially government information. If you're going to give it out, give it to everyone. But it concerns me.
That really is out of Putin's playbook. You pick your propaganda mouthpiece and you give it to them.
Yeah, right out of Putin's playbook. Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so why am I not sweating this? Why? It's the same reason why McCarthy likely resisted doing this in the first place. Easily the dumbest thing that Republicans in general could do right now is draw more attention to January 6th. Let's not forget that Trump is eyeballing indictments currently. I mean, we were talking in the stream yesterday about do we think the indictment's going to come this month in Georgia? Do we think it's going to come early March, end of March? boy howdy, it's not a good time to have Republicans bringing up the fact that January 6th is something there's any disagreement on. They want that to be, if they intend to survive as a party, just a Trump thing, not a Republican thing. So to be rehashing this in any way is it's ill-advised. Then, oh boy, then imagine for a moment that Fox gets this footage and they take out very specific clips, and let's say it's a guy trying to leave out one exit, and a police officer stops him and says, "You can't go out that exit. You have to go out that exit." And so the guy walks away from that exit, and then there's another angle from another camera of them leaving out a different exit 20 feet down the road. Maybe the police officer stopped him because at that moment there was Congress people being evacuated from the other or near the other exit in line of sight. You know, there could be a reason like that. But let's just say they snip out that clip, and it's of a guy trying to leave then, and a police officer saying, "Nope, you can't leave." And they cut it off before he says, "Out that exit, you have to use that exit." And they go, "Look, they herded them in here, and then they said they couldn't leave." And that's the conspiracy. What is that going to do to the MAGA base? I'll give you a hint. The House is now controlled by right-wingers. The MAGA base is going to insist they have their own J6 committee. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that be wonderful? If the House has their own J6 committee, where they also have people under oath. Remember what Clinton got impeached for? Lying under oath. If they have people under oath having to talk about January 6th, they either have to make an ass out of the MAGA J6 committee by saying, nope, this is what happened, X, Y, and Z, or they lie under oath, and during the upcoming trials, they get just slaughtered. Plus, all of the work they do, the public, I mean, when they present it, the public will be privy to. So if they interviewed a couple of hundred people and they pick 5 to go talk, and of course, they're the 5 craziest nutbags, the public will say, well, wait a minute. You spent all that time, members of the committee said you were interviewing hundreds of people. Who were the other people that you didn't ask to come testify? Point is, this can be nothing but bad for MAGA. Now, it can be bad for everybody else as well. Don't get it twisted. This is still dangerous. The fact that Tucker Carlson will be able to do more, I mean, rabble-rousing. This is very much in Putin's interest. And as they mentioned, these guys do work for Russians. You want to know how Russia attacks modernly? He sows discord in the country. The guy's going to regret it, but I can't deny he's in part responsible for my fondness for Bernie Sanders. Yeah, Vladimir Putin is. Why? In 2016, it has come to light that Russia was using what they call their web brigade to support far left and far right U.S. candidates for office, including Bernie Sanders. The difference is Bernie Sanders did not ask for their support and did not work with them. Bernie Sanders, to my knowledge, didn't accept any money from Russian oligarchs. What he did do was run an honest far-left campaign, also known as the same campaign he has always run. But the Web Brigade posted pro-Bernie memes, etc., etc., etc. The point was not to get Bernie elected. I don't think they actually considered that they would really be getting these people elected. On the other side of that, though, you had MAGA, or Trump at the time, which became the Make America Great Again section of the Republicans, which, frankly, it's just mask-off Republicans. But he was happy. He'd take money from anybody. He full-on stage, asked for Russia's help. So in Trump, they hit the jackpot, Russia. They in terms of sowing American discord, they absolutely hit the jackpot. They got, if they would have known that Trump actually getting elected was a possibility, they would have, tripled down on him early. They got a lack of support for Ukraine. A large part of the reason the Ukrainian invasion even happened, Russia's invasion of Ukraine even happened, was because of our weakened relationship. Remember, Trump's first impeachment was over his attempting to bribe Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Absolutely wild the way that worked out. But don't forget who the core instigator was. It began with Putin tampering with United States politics. It's an attack. It is literally how they attack. So, these super pro-Putin MAGA types, including far-right congressmen who take bribes from Russian oligarchs. I give you George Santos. We did a whole story on that. I promise you, I will look into it, but I promise you, Matt Gaetz has taken money from Russian oligarchs. I'll look up the specifics in a moment. But these super far-right people are now rabble-rousing once again. And I think it's going to backfire. Because this is going to, if Tucker Carlson takes this football and runs with it, this is just going to result in a demand for a right-wing version of the J6 committee. And I don't see how they could run that without hurting themselves in the polls, without making themselves look more ridiculous. And that would be happening while the leader of all of this is theoretically undergoing a trial for attempting a coup. Honestly, I mean, it's going to be destructive, but I'm going to be laughing at the equal destruction which is done to MAGA. I say it's going to be destructive because a lot of the folks that hear this are a lot of far right extremists are just, or rather, a lot of the people on the far right are just one or two small issues away from going full-on extremist, load the guns, let's go, crazy. So my concern is that, yeah, people are going to hear this, and some of the kooks are going to be motivated to do something awful, attack a jail, some of the personnel there, or who knows what. But on the upside, McCarthy is going to suffer, and that makes me happy because there will be calls from the far right to go have a J6 committee, and he's either going to have to say, no, we're not doing that, and come up with a reason why, or he's going to have to actually try to investigate Antifa's involvement in a Trump rally turned apparently planned riot. It's going to be delicious Schadenfreude. If you want to do something about this, you actually can vote in primaries, folks. Good Lord. If we have seen nothing else, look at how Russia attempted to attack us. Look at what the two versions of extremists did. Far left extremists are like, yeah, we are going to extremely provide health care for all. We are going to extremely make sure there are social safety nets for all Americans, so we all have a fair shot at the American dream. You can't good guy your way into villainy, and they were attempting to do that. I think Bernie showed quite nicely. Also, the fact that most people on the far left do not take corporate PAC money and would not take a donation from an oligarch. So this can only backfire for Russia. If you want to know who to support, yeah, go left. Go as left as you can. Vote in the primaries. Get the Democratic ticket loaded up with people who are actually going to vote for progressive issues, who are going to vote for support of Ukraine. Also, bear in mind, when I say this is Russia's way of attacking, I mean that literally. What is happening now is Russia's way of attacking Ukraine. They are just waiting right now. They are just waiting, attempting. Oh, thought I was closing it out. No, son. Or daughter, whatever. No, this is Russia's way of attacking Ukraine. They're just waiting for somebody else to be in control of the government. They are hoping that votes to continue funding Ukrainian resistance to invasion don't go through. They're hoping they get enough far-right people that Ukraine's assistance from the United States is cut off. That is, when you want to look at the actual military consequences of it, there it is. They are hoping that U.S. arms, those fat Abrams tanks, baby, those Bradleys, those Javelin missiles, the St. Javelin be praised, that's taken out Russian helicopters and tanks left and right. They're hoping that stops by tricking enough Americans through propaganda to get MAGA folks in office. So you've got to counteract that. I say go far left instead of just left because we have people like Hillary Clinton who, yes, they would, excuse me, I know Hillary Clinton's not on the ticket. Hillary Clinton said a thing. She was saying she hopes this becomes Russia's Afghanistan, meaning a long, drawn-out war which drains that country's resources. You know what? From you only care about America's well-being perspective, yeah, that would be ideal. If we could keep the war going indefinitely, give Ukraine just enough support to keep fending off Russia, but not drive them out entirely, yeah, that would be in probably America's best interest. You couldn't get a better bang for your buck. It's the competition on the world stage is between the United States, China, and Russia. Russia is now a distant third, and the longer they stay in this war, the farther they're going to fall. The longer we have to not even worry about them. From a human decency point of view, what we should be doing is giving Ukraine everything they need to kick out Russian invaders immediately. Today. Abrams tanks, beautiful. Bradleys, beautiful. Keep them coming. Give them jet fighters. I don't give a damn. Kick out the Russian invaders. I'm not anti-war. I am simply anti-invasion. I'm anti-aggressor, but I'm real pro resisting the aggressors. So, by all means, load them up. Go left to give Ukraine the resources they need to win the war. That is the decent thing to do. That's why I advocate for voting in primaries and voting as left as you can. I take it back. That's not why I advocate for voting in primaries. That is why I advocate for voting as left as you can in primaries. In fact, in any given opportunity. Vote as left as you can, because left equals good governance, frankly. However, I do want to clarify, I advocate for voting in primaries because it is an option available to you as an American citizen, even if you disagree with me on every point. That's a statement of fact. It's an option available to you, and you should take advantage of it. If you care about Ukraine, if you care about decency in America, and if you care about honesty in politics, I suggest you vote as far left as you can. And I do want to stress that we are not leaving even the centrists among the Democrats are not leaving Ukraine to its own devices. In fact, I'm not even sure if that's a phrase, but in fact, the support for Ukraine is strengthening amongst just about everybody who is not directly bought by Russian oligarchs. In fact, Joe Biden has recently taken a trip to Ukraine in the middle of a war. I mean, I got to give the guy credit. He is, if you pull out a list of things I could have asked the U.S. president to do to support a country that is getting invaded, Joe Biden's checked off most of those boxes. And let's have a gander at Morning Joe talking about Biden's meeting with Zelenskyy. Before we get there, I should say, if you're enjoying the stream, please give us a like. Definitely helps the channel. Consider subscribing. Your old pal Jake takes a whack at doing these every day. Not always successful, but definitely trying to put out as much good content as I can. If you want to keep it going, consider subscribing to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. Have a look at Joe Biden, his trip to meet with Zelenskyy in Kiev. So Joe Biden took a trip. God bless him. Every time I wanna criticize this guy, he does something to make me happy. Again, this slips. Joe Biden took a trip to Kiev to visit with and speak with President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. This is huge. This is a show of solidarity between countries that I think needed to happen in some form, and I'm impressed that it took this one. The reason being, Putin needs to understand that the U.S. is going to stand strong with Ukraine. However, I don't want to make this out necessarily to mean that all is going to be well forever. We still have an election coming up, and that is going to have dire consequences for the people. Well, it's going to have serious consequences for the people in Ukraine, no matter how it goes. It's either going to be very good or very bad for Ukraine. We need to hope that with the, God help us, House and Senate and presidency that we have in place right now, the political will is there to keep supporting Ukraine, at least through 2024, at which point, let's hope we can take the House back. Let's hope we can get, again, a situation where we have a Democratic House, Senate, and presidency. If that happens, oh boy, I think Russia is done for in Ukraine. That doesn't happen, dire times. But a great sign that Russia is not going to have an easy time of things from now until 2024 at least is that Joe Biden just visited Ukraine in person. Here's Morning Joe talking about it.
Contributing writer at The Atlantic, Elliot Cohen, writes about President Biden's historic visit to Ukraine in a new piece for the magazine titled, "Biden Just Destroyed Putin's Last Hope." In it, Cohen writes, quote, "Symbols matter. A Kennedy or a Reagan at the Berlin Wall, a Churchill with a cigar and a bowler. For that matter, a green-clad Zelenskyy growling, 'I need ammunition, not a ride.' Simply by taking the hazardous trip to Kiev, Biden made a strategic move of cardinal importance. While the president clearly intended to bolster the confidence of Ukraine and the commitment of ambivalent Europeans and neo-isolationist Americans, his real audiences lay elsewhere. As his remarks about Western strength indicated, Russia has cycled through a series of theories of victory in Ukraine. It's been reduced to one last hope, that Vladimir Putin's will is stronger than Joe Biden's. And Biden just said by deed as well as word, oh, no, it's not. That is a gut punch to Russia's leader. The Russians received word of the trip. We're informed, and presumably the threat stated or implied, that they would get a violent and overwhelming response if they attempted to interfere with it. And
okay, let me just So first of all, first line, last line, or yeah, let's just talk about that whole piece. The Russians received word of the trip, that they would get okay. So what he said in the beginning, that it's essentially whose will is stronger. Yeah, that's another way of saying leading up to 2024, how much resistance or how much help is Ukraine going to get from the United States? How much resistance in terms of military hardware, in terms of former U.S. Special Forces heading on over to Ukraine to help fight in the territorial defense of Ukraine, is going to happen. It appears that Joe Biden is saying, buddy, we're in this for real. We are fully supporting Ukraine. That's excellent. Further, let me just be clear about that last line. Implied that they would get a violent and overwhelming response if they attempted to interfere with it. As in, look, over in Eastern Europe, Russia might be, if this was a prison, say, Russia's in the minimum security one, and for whatever reason, the U.S. is visiting from their prison, and in the current building, Russia might be the scariest con artist currently imprisoned. U.S. is the scariest murderer. Don't F with the U.S. Look, I'm not usually happy about U.S. military might. I think it represents a loss of opportunity in so many other things we could have been doing with our time and resources. I think we were able to donate all the tanks we donated because they were collecting dust, because we just have so many GD things. Okay. Setting aside that, the fact is we do have. The fact is we are the only nation who has used a nuke before. Folks, don't even play. If the president says he's going somewhere and he means it, he's going there. That's how she works. It would have been hilarious and destructive for Russia if they would have attempted to interfere. Of course they wouldn't have. They just, even as a matter of politics, they wouldn't have, just because of how it would nettle NATO feathers. They wouldn't have. But it's just funny to me that they're like, and just so you know, we're still the U.S. effing A. Come on.
Quote. Join us now, staff writer at The Atlantic, Tom Nichols, and former spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the United Nations, Hagar Shamali. She also worked at the NSC and the Treasury Department. Good morning to you both. Hagar, I'll start with you. The significance of seeing the President of the United States walk through the streets of Kiev with President Zelenskyy yesterday is what?
First, the logistical feat that it takes for the White House, the military, the Secret Service to get the U.S. president to a war zone where there is no U.S. military presence is very significant. But the fact that they had it now a year later, right before the year anniversary, and you have Biden there hugging.
And I do just want to say, oh, hell yeah, look at that. That's a hell of an image. Yeah, no U.S. military presence there. If they couldn't get him there, because I do wonder if there would have become a U.S. military presence. Like, yeah, we're just putting this effing fleet here in place because we wanted to say hi and somebody dared say that we couldn't. So, we just killed every living thing that that had a fur hat on for a 10-mile radius, and then we landed and did whatever the hell we want. I'm sorry, the idea is humorous to me.
President Zelenskyy saying that the U.S. support will endure and will be here. What he's saying is that we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here until you defeat Russia. But also, when you couple that with the military support, he now announced an additional $500 million in military aid, additional sanctions. What he's trying to say is, we're going to be here for you, but also we want to get to the end of this as quickly as possible. It's very symbolic, very impressive.
And Joe, we've been talking this morning about some of the details of this trip, completely in secret, a small group.
Okay, this is pure speculation, but I do really want to focus in on this point because Joe Biden has historically been quite a centrist, but he has shown that he is willing to deal with reality from time to time. When he says, but we want to get to an end of this as quickly as possible, I realize that they're couching that as if saying, like, we don't want to spend American dollars on military stuff forever and ever. Another way to look at that would be him saying, no. I heard what Clinton said, too. She's not presently involved in this. Please and thank you. We are looking to boot Russia out just like you are. Obviously, that's not true. There's been debate over whether or not we're going to be committed all the way through retaking Crimea, which I want to stress, Crimea is if we said retaking Florida, if we were trying to retake the United States from an invader. It's not a separate part of Ukraine. Crimea is just a region in Ukraine, like the Donbass is. These are just regions of Ukraine. Like if we said the Midwest, that's what people are saying when they say the Donbass. So I hope that was him saying to Zelenskyy, this is our commitment. We're here with you. I just can't say that I know that's what that I'm not reading too much into that. I can't promise that.
A group of people at the White House.
That might be wishful thinking on my part.
Weeks and really months in the making. The president wanted to make this trip as he watched other world leaders walk through the streets of Kiev with Zelenskyy. There was a plane that was not the usual Air Force One that took him. There was a long train ride from Poland into Kiev. There was a motorcade with no sirens or lights on to get him in quietly. And then the images we just saw there of him walking confidently through the streets of Kiev with President Zelenskyy.
Just a remarkable journey for Joe Biden. I mean, you read a recounting of it in the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. It reads like a movie script. All of the diversions, all of the things that he had to do to get to Kiev and shake the hands of President Zelenskyy and walk around Zelenskyy and show the people of Ukraine his support for him. Tom Nichols, it's probably hard for us to actually be able to put into words just what that meant, not only to President Zelenskyy, but more importantly to the people.
Hey, real quick, every time you hear some right-wing stooge doesn't really know anything about foreign politics. Anytime you hear, God help us, somebody on the left be a useful idiot for Russia because they cannot separate the idea of socialism and communism and what the Soviet Union was, which was truly none of those things. If you run into one of those people, remember that wall right there. People are dying. People are getting killed because of Putin's ambition. People are dead right now because of that. And they are dying every day because of that. Want to know why I am so in favor of the U.S. helping in any way it can and ending this thing as fast as it can? It's because Ukraine is being invaded. The sovereign country, it is being invaded for no damn reason. And people are dying because of it. You have kids fighting for their country and for their lives and for their families' lives. You have hospitals full of pregnant women getting shelled. Civilians dying left and right. And the military folks who are dying shouldn't have to be fighting to begin with, because this war is simply for Putin's ambition. F that guy. And good on Joe Biden for this visit.
People of that war-torn country.
And to the world. This was, a president of the United States doing something that the Secret Service didn't want him to do, that people didn't expect him to do, took us all by surprise, and walked through an actual war zone. Aside from, we've just been talking about the logistics of it, the idea that an American president would take that personal risk is really something. And I think that's partly why you're seeing the outrage that you're seeing from Putin, who doesn't go anywhere without being in a cocoon of guards and armored trains and cars, and also here in the United States for Biden's opponents. I mean, this was the Joe Biden that's not supposed to exist. This very active and vital guy taking on a punishing schedule. I mean, I got tired just thinking. I've done some overseas trips with politicians. I got tired just thinking about the schedule. And so, Biden, I think, really surprised a lot of people on both sides of the Atlantic. And I think he's right that NATO has never been stronger. And it's a remarkable turnaround for an alliance that, just 10 years ago was thinking about what its role in the world was supposed to be.
10 years ago, I'm not sure I would have been in support of continuing NATO. Honestly, I don't know. It wasn't even on my radar at the time. But in that context, yeah, it seemed to be an outdated organization 10 years ago from even my limited understanding at the time and my understanding now of politics at the time. It appeared to be an outdated organization, but man, apparently a group of allied countries saying we will not invade each other and we will protect each other if we get invaded. Yeah, apparently a union against invasion is an important thing to keep around. It would seem.
Yeah, and we need to underline this fact, Tom. You and I both former members of the Republican Party. Before I criticize members of the Republican Party, Mitch McConnell and most Republicans in the United States Senate have been traditional, taken the traditional stand of Republicans. They've stood shoulder to shoulder with Joe Biden in our defense of freedom. But you look at, like, for instance, Ron DeSantis, who actually went on Fox News yesterday and said that Putin doesn't really pose a risk to his neighbors. And it's absolutely painful.
Eye-watering.
It's absolutely painful, especially a guy who wants to take control of a party that Ronald Reagan once led and went to the Brandenburg Gate and said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. What a way to devolve for a party.
Ron DeSantis and other Republicans don't want this next election, or really anything, to be about foreign policy. It's their
true. But also bear in mind, if they put out any foreign policy, it's going to be pro-Russia. The MAGA folks. There's a lot of folks that say we shouldn't differentiate between MAGA and Republicans. There is a difference. And I am not even it's going to be real hard for me to say this. All right, hold on 1 second. I am on the side of Republicans. Yeah, no, in all seriousness, I'm on the side of Republicans when it comes to differentiating between MAGA and Republicans on this issue. Just like I say I'm on the side of MAGA when it comes to a lot of the U.S. oligarchy issues, traditional Republicans still understand that on the world stage, Russia's not a friend. In this current climate, we don't really have enemies in the traditional sense. What are we going to do? Go to war with these countries? No, we're not. Once you get to a certain point in terms of economics, in terms of military power, the only reasonable option between countries is to engage in economic war. An actual military war. It just the math doesn't work out. So Russia's not a friend, folks. As in, America will be directly harmed. As in, American interests will be directly harmed by Russia getting to stomp around and invade other countries and take them over. It's disruptive to big business, as well as, decency. So Republicans will not, the traditional Republicans will not take a pro-Russia stance. No, sir. But the MAGA folks who have absolutely, first of all, no understanding of foreign policy. Second of all, a lot of them, such as George Santos, are literally in the pockets of Russian oligarchs. Still wondering where he got that $700,000 from. I'm just talking about the $28,000 donation he got from an oligarch. Yeah, we don't know where he got that $700,000 from. The traditional Republicans are not going to take that stance. By the way, real important that Trump gets indicted, gets tossed in prison, because that dude is extremely pro-Russia. That dude is responsible, largely, for the invasion of Ukraine by Putin. He weakened Ukraine so much by showing a wavering in America's support of that country's ability to be sovereign, ability to not be invaded, by dangling the military aid that we were obligated by decency, if nothing else, to give them, but also, our word. Trump needs to be in prison because if he's on the ticket, then suddenly Russia's, or rather Ukraine's continued support from the United States, that is on the ticket then. But if we have, and another MAGA guy, Ron DeSantis, as he's saying, if he is a serious candidate for president, then that is on the ticket. We need to get Trump in prison to eliminate one of those guys toot sweet.
Achilles heel. They don't know anything about it. They don't care. The base they have to deal with is actively hostile to any discussion of foreign policy. Partly, as it is that anti-Zelensky, anti-Biden reflex, but partly because the Republicans have abandoned the internationalist, the kind of muscular internationalism that Reagan brought to the end of the Cold War, and adopted a kind of sour know-nothingism about foreign policy. And those are the primary voters. And this is, I think, why you're seeing the House being, the House members somewhat difficult, more difficult than the Senate members, because that's the very core of the GOP base. Those are the primary voters that they have to get past. And those voters don't want to hear anything about foreign policy or NATO or Ukraine or Zelensky because they watch a lot of TV and they don't know much more else.
Yeah. Jen.
Hagar, I wanted to ask you, too, you've worked so much on sanctions policy in the past in all of your different jobs. We haven't spent a lot of time recently talking about whether this could all fall apart. Because remember, in the beginning, it was like, oh, countries won't come together on this. They will not do the same level of sanctions. What's your assessment looking at this on what the challenges may be for the Treasury Department, a place where you spent some time?
Sure. Well, sanctions, as a rule, they take time to work. And that's the case with anything, right? When we think about Iran, for example, and when we got to those negotiations, it took years of those sanctions working, undermining their oil proceeds, bringing Iran to its knees to the negotiating table. And so with Russia, when you're talking about the advanced, heavy sanctions that you have now, they've only been in place for a year. You've had sanctions since 2014. You and I both worked on them when we were in government together. But they're very different now. They are very forceful. I will note that the Treasury Deputy Secretary Wally Adeyemo, a friend of mine, is speaking today at the Council on Foreign Relations, where he will talk about the latest in the effect of sanctions. What I've seen is that he will be saying that due to sanctions, the U.S. and from the West, Russia has lost 9,000 pieces of military equipment. 50% of their tanks are down. So there is a real cause and effect here when it comes to sanctions. But as a rule, and this is the case for everything, sanctions are one piece of a foreign policy strategy.
Okay, I did just want to say, I'm sorry to freeze you there.
They're not.
I did want to say, with the caveat that I honestly, I don't have as good an understanding of this to say I am 100% never going to change my opinion on this. But thus far, I have been for 100% sanctions, as in do zero business, goose egg business with Russia until it's over. Perhaps, now I can't think of an exception. Maybe, and again, this comes down to my understanding not being full enough of how the oil situation works in terms of military reserves. But perhaps with the exception of like only buying oil from them, if that were, I mean, I don't think they're going to, doesn't matter. Point being, I'm for, turn of phrase here, stepping on the gas as much as possible with sanctions, because you can do an infinite amount of sanctions without firing a bullet, and nobody has to get killed, and you are severely punishing a country.
Not the silver bullet in achieving a national security objective. They work when coupled with diplomatic efforts, military efforts, humanitarian efforts, whatever it might be. And in this case, and given especially Biden's announcement in Ukraine to expect additional sanctions against Russia sanctions evaders and other elements that support its military, I would expect all of that to ramp up even further this year.
I mean, just fantastic news. I'm proud of Biden for that one. You can bet I'm going to be ragging on him again soon for the train disaster in Ohio with Norfolk Southern. But I got to give the credit where it is due. This trip to Ukraine, it was good. It was good of him to do. It was a good show of solidarity. Yeah, I've said my piece on Ukraine. You know how I feel. Boot those Russian bastards out. There is no justification for their invasion. It's an attempt at like 1800s style, early 1900s style colonialism. That's all it is. What can you do? Oh boy, there's a lot. Link in the description. There's a bunch. There's a link to U.S. Vetted Ukrainian aid organizations. So if you want to aid Ukraine directly, you can. There is, I mean, think about how harsh the winter was in Texas for those people that lost their power for a span that can be measured in days. Now imagine that Texas was getting shelled constantly, and you have what Ukraine was dealing with. Help in any way you can. If you want to feel better about the state of the world, do something about it. I would recommend picking one of those aid organizations. If you have some spare cash, donate to them. If you have supplies they may need, send them to them. But kudos to good old Dark Brandon for going overseas and showing some solidarity. I think we should as well. So, they have a gander here. Dank Underwood says, sorry I'm late. 2 for Tuesday. Glad for more WYCD. Well, delighted to have you, Dank Underwood. Glad to see you. For a little context, it is Punchki Day, a.k.a. Fat Tuesday. Just about one of my favorite holidays because it is an opportunity it's an excuse to eat donuts. That's it. I'm sure it celebrates something, but like a true son of Poland and Lithuania, I have no idea what it's actually about. I just know punchkis are involved. And we're also talking about the current war in Ukraine. And on that note, a fella by the name of Beau of the Fifth Column recently talked about Putin's posturing. He's been talking about having another look at the START treaty. That was the agreement to start de-escalating post-Cold War the nuclear arms that we have. Well, Putin's now talking about having another look at that. Let's do a proper transition so I can record this in a manner that makes it easier on me later. And then we're going to look at Beau of the Fifth Column's video on it. Maybe take another whack at that one. Beau of the Fifth Column recently discussed Putin's bloviating, his puffing his chest out. Nope, I didn't do that right either. Hey, there we go. All right, there's a reason why we sometimes do multiple takes. Let's take another whack at this. You get if we're watching the live stream, you get a behind the scenes at poor Jake's attempt to record properly. And we're going to start that recording right here. Beau of the Fifth Column recently discussed Putin's puffing his chest out about the START treaty. And even though it sounds scary, he's talking about nuclear arms and all of that. I will say it does not bode well for Ukraine, but it is also not necessarily what it sounds like. Let's have a look at what he's talking about.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Beau again. So today, we're going to talk about New Starts. We're going to talk about the New START Treaty, what it is, what it does, what it doesn't do, and kind of put it into focus. It's been getting a lot of coverage lately, And it hasn't actually been bad coverage, to be honest. For the most part, most outlets are avoiding the obvious fear-mongering that could accompany this at this point. But there are some who are engaging in it. So we're going to kind of go over it. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, Putin, in his speech, said that Russia was suspending compliance with the New START treaty. This is a treaty that provided regulations on how nuclear arms are deployed. There are some common misconceptions, and we'll clear those up, because even though there isn't a lot of fear-mongering going on, some additional context might put people more at ease. Okay, so the first thing you hear about this is that it limits the number of nuclear weapons. No, that's not true. It's really not. That's not what it does.
I'm just going to pop off screen. He's nailing it so far.
It limits the number deployed, ready to go at any point in time. That's what it limits. Not the number that are available, just the number deployed. Now, people seem, there are some who seem concerned because now we're at greater risk. Not really. We're really not. I want to say the treaty limited it to 1,550 warheads, something in that range.
So for perspective, I'm sure he's going to go into it, but for perspective, the treaty limited the number of warheads that can be out there to a number that is still, in short, total destruction for us all. Hence the little acronym. It's a START, but it wasn't actually, okay, we can all breathe easy now. If you lived through the Cold War, you have a sense of how absolutely ridiculous the world's nuclear arsenal is.
If you were to pull up modeling on nuclear exchange, most of them are around 500. It's a 500 warhead exchange. Presents enough to do that and remain in compliance with the treaty 3 times over. It doesn't actually limit the potential destruction at all. It also does not limit tactical nukes. Even in the limitations, there is some fuzzy math. A bomber, as an example, is counted as 1 warhead, I believe.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna skip forward a little bit because he's essentially saying the same thing. It's a limitation that essentially doesn't matter if it comes down to the actual deployment of nuclear arms, because with the number out there, everything's still just glass. Also, if it actually came to that, I don't believe it would. Nobody who has, to my knowledge, nobody who has the ability to launch one of these things is dumb enough to not understand what the consequences would be. I don't think it should be taken lightly, but just to kill any demagoguery that might happen, it's a ridiculous idea that these nations would be seriously considering using these weapons at this stage for any reason.
It's also worth noting that it appears Putin is talking about the inspections. Part of the treaty allowed each party, the U.S. and Russia, to inspect the other's capabilities, kind of. And Putin's saying that he's not going to allow that anymore. Okay, and that sounds scary, except for the fact that I'm not even sure it's been happening. They were suspended during the public health issue, and I actually haven't seen any news of them restarting. They might have. But understand there was a very lengthy period where it wasn't occurring at all. There are other methods, such as surveillance flights, that can help determine a lot of this. So measuring compliance, not really that big of a deal. Now, overall, for most people, if you are a Cold War kid, none of this is surprising. If you're Gen Z, you might just be realizing how many nukes are pointed at the United States as you watch this, and it might be a little unnerving. Please remember that this situation has existed for like half a century. Another thing that's worth pointing out
before he gets there, if you know, a lot of times I talk about if you're like a regular watcher of Wicked, help inform some of the new folks. Like tell them, hey, links in the description always for what you can do. However, I would say take some of that attitude and apply it to talking about politics in the real world, particularly if you are somebody who lived through the Cold War and you find yourself talking to a group of lefties, and some of them are some of these younger cats who, don't get me wrong, they have lived through horrors, absolute horrors. The situation with school shootings, they got to go to school every day and not know if this is the day that the quiet kid shows up with an assault rifle. It's bad, but this will be a new one to them. The reality that there is world-destroying technology out there, and we have threatened each other with it on a nation-to-nation scale. Just walk them through that a little bit. I don't mean try to scare them. I just mean if you hear them panicked because they are now becoming aware of this, as Beau says, walk them off the ledge. You're like, all right, now I grant it's a serious issue, but look, we've been down this road, both in terms of rhetoric and in terms of fingers hovering over the button, and it's demagoguery is a big part of it. People trying to scare us is a big part of it. Just temper the panic a little bit if you've got experience having lived through this.
In Putin's speech is that he said he wouldn't start testing unless the U.S. did. That's developing new stuff and testing the weapons. That indicates that they really don't want another arms race, assuming that he is telling the truth, and I have no reason to believe he's not, because frankly, Russia can't afford an arms race. So that's good. Now, hearing all of this,
right now, Russia couldn't afford to upgrade to a Happy Meal, or he couldn't afford to upgrade to an extra large Coke. Russia. They are in dire financial straits, and I love to see
say that speech is symbolic or performative, and it is. And this move is symbolic or performative, especially considering, I want to say the treaty expires in like 2 years anyway, maybe 3. But as we have talked about numerous times on the channel, symbolic and performative actually matter. They tell us a lot, and they help shape narratives. So, what is this saying? What is the messaging? There's a couple of different parts to it. One is nuclear saber rattling, which from Russia, okay, whatever. If you were to take all of the Russian government to include the state media, they rattle that saber as often as I say, so today we're going to talk about whatever. It's a very common occurrence. That doesn't mean much. What it may signal is a willingness on the part of the leadership in Russia in an attempt to set the conditions for the populace in Russia to accept even more mobilization, another draft.
There it is. And that's the danger to Ukraine. Remember, in an earlier segment, we were talking about Russia's long-term strategy for this war is going to be, in part, to try to outlast the U.S. government, as in make it 2 elections and hope that their web brigade gets another right-wing lunatic put in office. By the way, expect a ramping up of Russian cyber attacks. That will mean you're going to see a lot of sudden new right-wing conspiracy theories. You're going to see a lot of websites that come out of nowhere and are suddenly everywhere. That's the Russian web brigade, folks. And yeah, they attacked us in 2016. They have been attacking us periodically since. And as was once my job to defend against in a local news agency, they ramp up their attacks at election time. They will be doing that especially now because they will be trying to cut off the supply of arms to Ukraine. Be on the lookout. And hey, if you see something on the internet that looks like a bot that is promoting pro-Russian propaganda, or just starting what seems to be flame wars in the comments section for no reason, report them. That has a measurable difference on how effective they are. Report them.
A wider war, a longer war. In doing this, Putin admitted how badly the war's going for them.
Boom.
He didn't come out and say it. But to go from a special military operation that's supposed to last days to making a speech near the 1-year anniversary talking about how, well, now we're going to have to, re-examine our nuclear posture. It's an acknowledgement of how bad that war has gone for them. And it might be part of a campaign to introduce the idea to the Russian people of a wider, longer war. A majority of Russians at this point want negotiations to begin. So they're already kind of done with it. That idea, what we talked about in a recent video, all wars are popular for the first 90 days, that's true over there too. There's fatigue setting in. So this may be a signal, a message, the beginning of setting the conditions to prepare the Russian populace for a much longer war than anticipated. That's the real takeaway, not the nuclear stuff. It is important to remember that the government in Russia is made up of Russians, people, not monsters. Nobody wants a nuclear exchange. That's not a thing. People don't actually want that. No sane person, anyway. And I know there's a lot vested in portraying Putin as a madman. And sure, I mean, you can say that some of the things that he's done are monstrous. You can say that it's just callous and all of this stuff, and that's true. But it's been calculated. In my opinion, it has been very poorly calculated, but it's been calculated.
Yeah. I fear stupidity at least as much as I fear insanity. Because a lot of times the outcome is the same. Fortunately, I don't think Putin is I don't think he's dumb at all, frankly. But I certainly don't think he's dumb enough to equate to being as insane enough as you'd have to be to launch. So yeah, in short, I agree wholeheartedly with Beau of the Fifth Column there. I do believe it's just an attempt by Putin to prepare his folks for, that's not how that should play, to prepare his folks, his people, for a longer war, which is absolutely what he's going to try to do. Now, the United States cleared the way, showed the world, really innovated when it comes to invading other countries on a pretext. In the early 2000s and stretching on for 20 years, the United States showed the despots of the world that we are in fact in an era where you can give the slightest pretext for a war and keep it going for a monstrous amount of time. That is one of the dark legacies of the war in the Middle East. And I have to say the war in the Middle East because it started in Iraq and then we just kind of said, we're taking on all comers. That will be something that we're going to have to work to undo. I believe we have an obligation to assist Ukraine simply out of decency, simply because we are mighty. And if that might is worth anything, it should be used in defense of the innocent, which Ukraine is. No doubt about it. However, I believe we have an additional responsibility for having just recently been on the wrong side of this, invading a country on a pretext. We can thank George W. Bush and Colin Powell for that lie. But then not holding them responsible, and then keeping the war going through the entirety of Obama's administration, through the entirety of Trump's administration, God willing, inshallah. We have a responsibility to clean up our mess, and this is in part our mess, because Russia saw that the world, the modern world, in fact, will tolerate an indefinite invasion. The populace in the modern world will, if you play up nationalism correctly, will tolerate an indefinite invasion. And it does seem to me like that is what Putin is attempting to do here. He's attempting to say, hey, folks, we're in this for the long haul. It is extremely important that we do our part in America to make sure that the war is unwinnable for him. How do we do that? For God's sake, vote in primaries. Of course, link in the description. Vote in primaries. In addition, you can literally support Ukraine by if you have the funds and if you have the means, you can donate to one of the charities listed in the link below. It's a list of U.S. approved charities. Gripes. U.S. approved charities in Ukraine. Life has not been easy for them. You have Ukrainian officials using Gmail accounts because they've had to set up an infrastructure for dealing with this invasion as they were getting invaded. So do consider donating if it is something that if it offends you that in 2023 one country would think that it can occupy another simply because it felt like taking over some new territory with bullets. Well, this is, of course, a 2 for Tuesday. That means I will be back later on tonight. Certainly going to hork down another punchki. Maybe get a cup of coffee, and going to bring some new content for you. Maybe I'll try to keep it a little bit lighter in this next one. But thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed the stream, if you enjoy content like this, if you think it is of use to the country and to the world, I hope you'll consider giving this this stream a like and giving the channel a subscribe if you haven't already. I have been your old pal Jake, and this has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. I'll see you next time.